Hello, Cypress.io. Welcome to this talk on behavior-driven development, but not the way you've heard it before. I'm Claudio Lassala, your speaker for today. I'm going to be asking you for your feedback. This QR code is going to show up at the end of the talk. It's going to be a way for me to offer you this slide deck if you're interested, as well as some extra content for free that I have related to this topic that you may want to get deeper into it. Since we now have 30 minutes, let's make it count. You have also my email address up there. If after this talk, hopefully you're going to take some of the lessons that I'm going to share, some of the tips, and you're going to try it yourself. If you run into issues, realizations, questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I always enjoy connecting with people who attended my talks and tried out some of these ideas, and I want to know how it goes. I am a technical director here at Improving in Houston, Texas. I've been in software development since the mid 90s. I've been there for a while. Coding is not what I do in my spare time. As you can see from this slide, I do some other things. I like having a whole life, and why I make a point out of it is because that's going to be part of the conversation as we're going to come around to it. I have been blogging for 20 years. You can find my blog there at lassala.net. And I've also put out a short book a few months ago with 20 lessons from these 20 years of blogging. You may want to check that out. So, what is behavior driven development? BDD. Take a moment to think. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of BDD or when somebody tells you uh, something about BDD? What comes to mind? I propose you the idea that you should go beyond the gherkin language, the give and when then. Because what happens most often, people will go into possibly tooling around BDD. And when we're describing behavior, whose behavior, right? That's we say behavior-driven development. We're developing for to drive the behavior of who? And if you look it up, say on Wikipedia, right there at the start, it says BDD involves naming software tests, using domain language to describe the behavior of the code. So that's very specific. It's driving the behavior of the code. If you look a little bit deeper and you go see, like who created BDD, that was Dan North back in 2006 when people were talking and teaching the practice of test-driven development or test-driven design, as some like myself prefer. And BDD came as the next step after TDD, right? So it did start with like the way we name tests or the way we write tests. Nowadays, if you ask any of these AI tools, the large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, you get similar explanation like, it focuses on defining application behavior, focusing on system behavior. So we're, again, on this slide, you're thinking tests, the behavior of code, application, system. So that's what you're going to find, and that's probably how you heard it before, right? Now, there is a potential trap if we focus solely on those technical concerns as far as the behavior goes, because we may be building something perfectly according to the spec, but we may be building the wrong thing perfectly if we're not solving humans' problems. That's a potential trap that we may have everything again, everything according to spec, code, application, system. It's very accurate, but it does not solve the actual humans' problem. So when you focus on system behavior, focusing on the machine code, output that comes out of the code that we wrote, the system that we built, and machine executable instructions. If we flip that around and we think human behavior, and this is the BDD, but not the way you heard it before, this is what I would like to propose. put system aside for a little and think about human behavior, where we are going to be focusing on people, their needs, emotions, goals, preventing user anxiety and other things that get in our way of getting things done in life, in our job, tasks that we need to accomplish. So I propose we think people over systems. We go back to Agile Manifesto, right? So it's not that here that system is not important, is that people is more important than systems. So a very common anti-pattern that we find in the industry when we write, say, user stories following the typical template of as a, I want to, so that anti-pattern is that the role, the persona that we use we end up writing as a system. Have you seen user stories written like that? As a system. It's like, as a system, I want to log every transaction. Since when a system wants anything? It shouldn't really want anything, an automated system like software that we are building. If we rephrase that and we make it human centric, we would read that as a customer, right? Which conveys a person. I want to track my order so I feel in control. That's more human centric. So systems are instrumental, they serve a purpose, but people are the purpose. Thinking along those lines through some books that I've read in the past, Start With Why, Atomic Habits by um, Simon Sinek, James Clear, respectively, I kind of merged two ideas that they have that I believe they go hand in hand. This idea from Simon Sinek to start with why. So you go why, how, what. Whereas James Clear talks about the layers of behavior change, starting from identity, process, outcomes. So think about it. Why, identity, how, processes, what, outcomes. So I started seeing them kind of like going hand in hand. So going with the why, it asked me or made me ask the question as to why do I follow BDD? Why am I an advocate of BDD? So start with a purpose and the core belief, why we are doing it. For me, BDD, communication, collaboration. That's what I've learned. Then building an identity, right? It goes the why, the identity. Lasting changes about who you become, not just the outcomes you want. So I learned that in the beginning, I was using BDD as just a way to write my tests in a certain manner that now says given something, when something, then something. So going beyond that and really going beyond the outcomes that we want, and it becomes the identity. So when people ask me, so do you always follow TDD? And I say, no, not necessarily. I do have some standards, some frameworks that I follow to implement CDD if I deem um, the highest priority. But BDD, always. The conversation around writing good user stories that focuses on people's behavior and then going through the conversation to identify the scenarios described as given when then. Yeah, that I always do, independent of tools or anything like that. So that was the BDD shift for me was to work with teams where the team's identity becomes focusing on the human why first. So before we write any code, I have this little um, mantra that I say, no given when then, no code. I even had some stickers done in the past. If I do not have given when thens, I have that conversation that comes through those simple statements. I am not writing any code. Okay. So here's an example. Like what would that even look like in real life? Think about ride sharing, Lyft, Uber. Why did they succeed? Think about it. Back before having those services and those apps, um, we used to do the traditional walking outside, waving for a taxi that's coming by and then hoping that it was free for us. And then we had questions that we asked. Where is my cab? Maybe we called ahead of time and we don't know how far they are from us. How much will it cost? Like, is it going to be too expensive? More than I'm willing to pay for that ride? Is this the best route to go from where I am to where I need to go? Can I trust this driver who I've never seen before? How will I pay for this? Can I use my credit card? Do I have to pay cash? Write a check? So none of those are system problems. They were people's problems because of that anxiety. Like, do I have enough money? Do I have the form of payment that I can use for this? So the reason why ride sharing apps have worked is because they answer all of those questions. Live map tracking, you can see on the app where your ride is. Upfront pricing, you're going to know ahead of time how much that's going to cost you. Route transparency, you're going to see on the little map where you are, where you're going, and if you don't like that route, you can tell the driver, hey, I don't like going that route. Can we change the route? Sure. Driver ratings, right, from other people who have used that service with that driver. You can see that there in the reviews and all that. Cashless payments. By the time you get into the car and then out, it's all taken care of. You don't have to think about that. So you provide behavioral solutions for those problems. So at that point, if the person sees, oh, my ride is 10 minutes away, oh, I have 10 minutes to just relax a little bit, maybe meditate or read a few pages of this book or continue the conversation with the person that I was visiting, right? As you're in the car, you can see how long is it going to take. It's already paid for. I don't have to keep that anxiety or those questions with me. I can focus on something else, even if it's just like sitting back and relaxing. That's why they succeeded. Thinking about human behaviors, right? How do humans behave when they have those questions in their mind? And what kind of problems come with that? What kind of mistakes they may make because of that? So, oftentimes when we write scenarios, we tend to focus on the happy path, like all the stars align. This is how things should work. But we should also spend some time thinking about some of the other paths. There are many out there, but another three ones that we can look at. The angry path. For instance, somebody filling out the form that takes 40 minutes to go through, and then when you hit that submit, the application crashes and you lost those 40 minutes. We get angry as users, as people. Greedy, when a system presents a lot of things and a lot of options to users, and users select all of those options, regardless as to whether it actually makes sense to make all those selections. And then it pushes the system limit, and maybe even though the system provides the user with all those selections, it cannot actually handle all of that, right? Or the forgetful, we all do that, right? You put something in your shopping cart on an e-commerce website, and then you forget it there for a week, two, a month, you totally forget about it. Or it's because you got distracted. Maybe you work in an environment that you are always being pulled away in different directions, and then you forget whatever task you had started. By the time you get back to it, you don't even know what it is. Does the system that you're using allow you to continue from where you left off? Does it nudge you back into say, hey, you started this task, a while ago, 30 minutes ago, 3 hours ago, 2 weeks ago? Would you like to pick up from there? Would you like a summary of what happened since you started? What has changed since the last time you've looked at it? Are we asking those questions? So some essential skills that we can learn and develop for discovery of these different paths. And I'll show you like some tools for writing specifications that matter. So for instance, the angry path, right? There are errors that trigger frustration from the users. We all use some sort of system, automated systems, and we know what gets us angry. One way or one tool to develop for it, to account for that is empathy, right? Put yourself in the people's shoes, the people who will be using that product, that service, that software. Use it like them. And an example that I always bring up is like we software developers, we tend to have like a standing desk or an ergonomic chair, very nice. We have a wide screen or multiple widescreen monitors. We have noise canceling headphones, listening to our favorite music. So that's great, right? But then we're building system for people, the users of those systems. They may be in an environment that's very distracting with other kinds of music that maybe they don't like, with people calling their names all day, or maybe a customer facing them and yelling at them, complaining about something that's not going well in their day. We have to think about that, right? If people are using the system through those constraints, do we understand? Can we feel something that somewhat resembles that so that we can design systems? We can talk about those user stories, those give and when thens based upon those scenarios. Um, the forgetful path, right? Interrupted or incomplete actions. Mindfulness is a skill for that. Going out there and seeing in all of this environment that the users are having to live within. Um, Notice the context, the limits. Like, do the users, the people, have sticky notes all over their screens, on the edge of their screens, on their desks? Why is it? Pay attention. Maybe they're going to a screen on the system, they are looking up some information, they're writing down some information, they're putting that sticker on the side, they are navigating away someplace that system, and then they look at that sticky notes and they retype the information there. They're using still the same system most of the time. Why is it that the system does not carry that information forward to the user to make it easier so that they don't have to be doing these tricks? Or maybe they are different systems, which might get you to ask, well, can we integrate this one system with the other one so that the user does not have to jump these hoops or use these workarounds to get their job done. So we have to be mindful of those contexts and limits. Embarrassing path. I've added this when push means pull. Little story. For me, I'm originally from Brazil, and when we talk about UX and human-centered design, very often Don Norman's story about the Norman doors, you can look it up if you're not familiar with it, but it's essentially those doors that you walk up to them and you are unsure whether you're supposed to pull or push. One way to address this is by putting the word pull, push, right, to open the door. Well, for me, when I see push, it reminds me of the word puxe from Portuguese, which means pull. So it does not help, right, for this kind of user of doors that I am. So when I see the word push, I have to make a different association in my mind than that I grew up with to know, yeah, push means you go like this. That's the association that I have to make. Why do I bring that up? Because it's embarrassing, depending on the kind of mistake that we make because of these things. So the skill to develop here is inclusivity, where we need to consider other people's perspectives. And I'm not just saying like from different countries, it can be from different cultures, even within the same country, within the same big state, for instance. People may do things differently. People may think, do problem solving differently. So, for instance, another mistake that I normally make, I grew up using the metric system. So anytime somebody mentions something using the imperial system, be that, oh, that weighs 3 pounds. I have to think like, how heavy is that? It does not immediately come to mind. If somebody says, oh, that person is uh, 5'2", their height, 5'2", I have no connection in my mind. I cannot picture that because it's not natural for me. And if I have to work with a system that uses those things that have a cognitive friction or cause a cognitive friction for me, I end up making mistakes. And these mistakes, they have nothing to do with me being unable to making those conversions, but it could be that my environment is stressful. I have people yelling at me because their day is not going well, or maybe my day is not going well. And I do not have the time and space to process those differences. So knowing that if you have a fraction or a group that's using your product, your service, your system, think about that. What is their perspective? What would help them accomplish their job, accomplish the things that they need to accomplish in the easiest way possible so that they don't get embarrassed by making mistakes. Nobody likes making mistakes, even more, less so in public. Can we build something to account for those things? Has to do with behavior as well. So, first things first, systems are important, but people are more important. So, what I mean by that is yes, behavior driven development originally had to do with coming from TDD, making or writing tests in a manner that describes describes better what it is that we are trying to accomplish. Historically, it has been describing or creating specification of the system. That is still valid, but I'm proposing again that we look the other way first. Look at the people, not even the user. I don't even like much the term user all the time because before being a user, people are people. Nobody gets up in the morning thinking, yay, today I will spend 8 hours of my day sitting at a computer, hammering at the keyboard and using the mouse. Nobody live their lives thinking like that, getting excited about that. We have to think about them as people, right? What kind of problems they normally go through. What is their work environment like? The nature of their work. Is it stressful? Is it relaxed? Do they get to interact with public? What kind of public? Understand all of that first. Understand the behaviors that you're trying to help that person with. If that person behaves, say, by making mistakes because they're anxious about something. They are afraid of making mistakes or feeling embarrassment for making mistakes. Then how do they behave? So we need to account for that first. Once we have answers to those questions, we come up with what are the questions we need to ask to unveil those situations, those specs. Then we're ready to move on and say, okay, how are we going to be addressing that when that person uses our product, if it's a computer system, at that point they become a user. They come from being a person, a human, to becoming a user of that product and system. Okay, let's spec out that experience. We have our given one dance, and then we can go from there into the system to say, in order to achieve that human behavior or to help bringing value, taking into account that human behavior, what is the behavior we need from the system to achieve that goal, right? It's not replacing one with the other. It's just first things first. What are we focusing on first before we move on to the other thing? And they are interconnected. So the goal here is to, the ultimate goal is to build trust through predictable, helpful, and human-centered design. Big bold on human-centered design. Good BDD is a methodology for this, or at least the way that I've learned to articulate and I've used all of these years. Right? This is how I've made like my own version of BDD, if you will. Whatever works for the person who's leading a project, working, leading the conversations with stakeholders, with the business analysts, maybe with the people, right? That's beyond the business stakeholders, but the customers. That's why when we are writing user stories, for instance, we should be thinking about the not just the value for the business value, but we should also think about the customer value, the user value, and the societal value. Are we having conversations to unveil details about all of those and trying to hit as many of those as we can before we implement the solution? So call to action here is, start with your why. It's closely linked to the identity. Think about people's behavior and purpose. So when we're writing user stories, a lot of people follow the as a, I want to, so that. I like flipping the so that it starts with that. In order to, this is the value. What is the behavior we're trying to nudge people into? How do we help people, uh, have different uh, ways to deal with situations that may cause them to forget things, to get anger at things. So unveil those, think about the process and how are you going to achieve that, have the conversations, write out those given when thens, what does that look like? And I like seeing given when thens not from the standpoint of technical concerns, like given there's data in the database, when I click the submit button, then I see a table of data or something like that. It's like, no, it's more like given that book is in the inventory when I purchase it, then I should see it arrive within the shipping estimated shipping date or something like that, right? So removing the technical perspective from that first set of given when thens, focusing on the humans, and then yeah, when you as you get into the technical side of it, you can still write your given when thens from the technical perspective, but not in uh, you know in substitution of the human centric one. And then the outcome, the what's coming out of it. In the case of like BDD, it could be specs, tests, the living documentation. If it's a feature that we are building for somebody, what is that? What is the outcome that the feature is producing? Not the output, the outcome that it's producing. So always ask, what human behavior are you designing for? That's the first question we should be asking. I thank you for watching this video. I hope it piqued your interest on some of the things that I'm mentioning here. As I said, this is a QR code. Please provide me some feedback on how I could make this talk better. I would like to hear from you. Like, what is one thing that you're going to remember this talk by? And also, I'll be sending you, as you submit that form, I will send you an email with the slide deck that you just saw and a list of a whole bunch of blog posts and videos, including one that there's a 1 hour full version of this talk where I go into a few more details into some of those aspects. You're going to immediately get an email with a list of those in case you would like to go a little bit deeper into the topic that I've just gone over. So, once again, I thank you very much for watching this talk and please go ahead and reach out. Thank you very much.